Yo, what's going on? This one is on lesson planning. So it's an interesting topic. It's something that we kind of don't talk enough about as coaches, or sometimes it gets a little bit overlooked. There's a tendency to sometimes just show up and teach. So I'm going to discuss how we plan our lessons in Carraig and what we do with lesson planning. Some of the strategies we employ, why you need one, how to do it, and maybe some alternative ways that it could be done. So yeah, it's just something, and maybe you'll be able to use it in your own personal training, or for coaches, you might find a way to. Maybe this is something you haven't thought about, or a strategy you haven't thought about before. Maybe you have your own strategies that you want to share with us, and we'd be more than happy to have them too, right? So, okay, let's talk about lesson planning and why we as instructors and we as coaches need a lesson plan. And I mean the answer is kind of simple, right? If you have a structured, laid out plan for how you're going to approach a period of time, you have a much more likelihood of covering what you actually want, and you have this certainty that you've done this, right. There are a few reasons why a lesson plan is useful, but that's kind of the main one. Focus on what you want to achieve is a really obvious benefit of having a plan. I know myself, it's useful to come into the hall on whatever night it is and kind of look at the phone quickly, see what's in the agenda, and go, okay, I know where I'm at now, and that puts my mindset on straight away. It puts my focus on straight away for that night, and I know what I'm there to do, and the classes flow a lot better. I've gone to classes before without a plan, and I'm kind of improving the classes sometimes, which is fine-ish, but it's at the same time I always feel like you might be doing a bit of a disservice to your students who are coming here for a structured coaching approach. They're trying to build, or at least in my opinion, you should be trying to build a long-term development, and it's hard to build long-term development without a plan. I don't think you what's that quote? You don't become great by accident. There's this if you want to really narrow down on what you're doing and ensure that you're taking all the things that need to be done, I think you need a plan. It's really good from that point of tracking, right? That's the other really good point of a lesson plan, for tracking. You can look back over your lessons and you can say, well, I know I did this, 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 I know I did this. So you have this tracking metric now that you can look back on and say, I'm covering an awful lot of patterns, or I'm not covering enough sparring, or I didn't do any step sparring, or whatever it might be. My plan wasn't correct for this and that. The other side of it is the other kind of nice benefit of it is accountability, right? Because now you can say with confidence, I know I've covered X, Y, and Z. And in the same way you have this, because you have this tracking metric, now you're accountable for your decisions, right? You've planned your syllabus for whatever amount of time you've planned, and now you have this system now that makes you accountable to it, right? So if you've executed your plan correctly, you will have ticked off whatever you've focused on for that time, right? This is really useful for having conversations with people around testing, for example, or so-and-so really wants to do their next grade, or they really have been trying, and it's like, okay, well, we've covered X, Y, and Z, and you've missed X, Y, and Z, and it's harder for you to test because of that, or yeah, you've been here at all of these, and I know you should have covered X, Y, and Z, and so on and so forth, right? It's just easier to have these conversations when you have information, and you're not justifying your decisions based on a feeling, right? You know that you've covered X, Y, and Z, and so and so has been at X, Y, and Z, and now you can. It's very hard to argue it with facts and data, right? So this is some of the reasons why we want a lesson plan, right? It gives us focus, it gives us long-term planning objective, it gives us accountability, and it gives us something to track, right? And it gives us information and data points. How do we do it? So there's many ways to skin a cat, as they say, and the way I kind of approach lesson planning is much more high level and much more very kind of broad and not really, really detailed. Now that might change a little bit in the future. We're doing a kind of a bigger planning session for the whole sort of season. We're bringing in everybody in that helps in the club this weekend, and we'll talk about that in the future. But at the moment, how we plan the sessions at the moment are we kind of go sort of test to test. So for example, it might be September to December, and then it's sort of January to June, but we'd actually kind of split that in two. So you have a kind of a 4-month plan, a 3-month plan, and a 3-month plan. And that's kind of how we would approach our or how long we want to plan for, right? In terms of how we kind of actually do it, like I said, I take a broad sweep on this. Rather than planning every individual lesson down to a T for every minute and every hour or every second or exactly how long we're going to do it, I don't plan it like that. I remember when I was doing my leaving cert, I had an English teacher teaching us poetry, lunatic, but a brilliant teacher, and he had this idea of pegs that you hang your answers off. He would have the broad kind of concepts that you could use to flesh out your entire English essay. You need your pegs, is what he would say, pegs to hand these answers off, and it was something that stuck with me, He also had a really good way of teaching. That's something that's kind of rubbed off on me probably as well. I'll never forget that man talking about Gerald Manley Hopkins, Felix Randall, the poem was, and sickness broke him, and he would run around the classroom, sickness broke him, it bleeding broke him, and he'd stare at this girl right in the eyes, it bleeding broke him, and picked up her ruler, bang, broke it bleeding broke. He was a lunatic, but he had this infectious personality, and he had his plan, right? He didn't go in there anticipating, and then I'll shout at the girl and break her ruler to emphasize the point of sickness broke him. He had this plan that he had to cover this poet. He had his pegs. And this was the idea. This is the idea of what we kind of approach. We have pegs that we hang our lesson plans off, right? So what I mean by that is we will plan out our days. So we'll have our 2 or 3 days, and we will have our weeks laid out up to the next sort of test in a spreadsheet. And it'll be very, very kind of simple. It'll be hands, kicking, hands, feet, pattern, sparring, feet, hands, sparring, patterns, and whatever. Another one will have power, and we might have one for spec tech. And we have a broad structure for every class with a rough timeline on the side. So it might be, your 5 minutes warm up, your 10 minutes warm up, your 15, 20 minutes on topic A, your 15, 20 minutes on topic B, and we split that. So if it's a hands class, it'll be half fundamental technical hand techniques from the patterns and half application or sparring based hand work, and then we'll finish off the session with kind of stretching or strength or conditioning or whatever it might be. But we cover the kind of broad church across the grades. It's not like it's not like we sit there and plan out, I'm going to teach high side block, I'm going to teach knife hand strike, I'm going to teach back kick, and I'm going to teach blitz counter, and then next week I think it's too broad. I think it's too specific at the moment, but we have very broad sweeping statements. So we know we've covered hand techniques from the fundamental syllabus, we've covered hand techniques related to sparring, and in the next class we will do kicking techniques from the fundamental syllabus and related to sparring, as well as all the time, constantly throughout the classes, they're framed by the kind of warm up and the strength and conditioning sort of, or the flexibility or the stretching or whatever. These are constants throughout the whole class. But the big blocks, the pegs that we hang our classes off, are those kind of topics for the night. So we walk in, we go, I have a kicking class, so I know I need to go and work on this. And it's much easier to recall your last kicking class when you go, okay, well I did, kind of dolly chagging and bandy dolly chagging or whatever it might be, and I go, okay, that was more tailored toward white yellow. I might make it a little bit harder today, or what, this kind of idea, right? So that's how we kind of that's how we plan our sessions, big blocks, and then we can kind of say, we know we've covered patterns X amount of times, we know we've covered sparring method X amount of times, we know we've covered fundamental hands X amount of times, or fundamental kicking exercises X amount of times, and we're constantly doing the other stuff, the supporting skills in the class. So it gives us a kind of a like I said, a good metric, and we can say, and then if people want to debate us about this, we can say, well, here's the data, and it's really, really useful. But again, the last thing about this, how we do it, is it's not just that's the kind of snapshot of how we plan out the session, but there's a broader context to our lesson planning as well. We will have kind of high level goals that we want to achieve in that block, in that period of time, whether it's September to December or one of the other blocks. And it might be something like have X amount of people go to competition, have a greater improvement in flexibility, or a conscious effort to be to improve kicking, or whatever it might be, have X amount of people ready for promotion, these kind of goals. And we'll do goal setting at a different time, because it's a much more interesting topic, and not more interesting, that's not what I mean. It's just a much more diverse topic. This is more a how-to plan and what you can do for planning, whereas that's how to set goals and how to achieve. That's a whole other thing that we can talk about afterwards, right? So I mean, that's kind of how we do our lesson plans in Carraig, and they're internal to the club, they're internal to the coaches, and they're internal, and that's it. You know, the people coming to class don't need to know, they need to just show up and feel like they're training, and we're aware of that, you know, but they don't need to know, oh, it's a sparring class. And I'm not sure whether to share lesson plans or not. I think people who don't like sparring or don't like patterns won't come to a patterns class, and they won't, and then people will sort of pick and choose. I'm a bit worried about that. If I share the plans, will people pick and choose, or if I keep them to myself, then they don't know, but they might. Yeah. Anyway, look, it doesn't really matter. That's kind of how we do it. There are some other alternatives. I know I've seen plans before that are, you know, sessions are planned out very, very deep and very, very detailed for every session, and that kind of planning is great. It's almost where everything is prescribed down to the kind of letter or down to the minute, and you know, then as an instructor, if you can't be there, you know exactly what's been covered, and then you can. It's the same. It's how fine and how granular you want to be with your planning is different, and for me, the style that we use, it trusts the coaches a little bit to have a good set of coaching skills, that they know if they're teaching a hands class for sparring, they can look into their toolbox of sparring ideas and sparring coaching methods, right? And they're the kind of things that you can sit down and plan really, really details, like, okay, how can I create situations for sparring? How can I create this? What are the key ingredients and core? And you can really plan them detailed and deep in, you know, your knowledge in that. But they don't need to come into your overall structure plan is I suppose what I'm thinking about that. And this is kind of something I've been playing with at the moment that might come into our planning more and more and more, that we start to build a set of kind of coaching skills that augment the sort of coaching plan. You know, they're separate from each other. They don't have to be the same thing. That's just something I've been thinking about. So that's kind of planning for us: class planning, lesson planning, session planning. That's kind of how Carraig works. I'm really curious to see how other people plan their classes and plan their sessions. I've been talking to a few people already. I'm still working out the blog from Mr. Ford. That thing is taking me ages because there's so much of it to transcribe. But that's okay. I have some really cool. He has some cool thoughts on that I'll share whenever I finish that. But if there's other people out there that have how do you plan your sessions? What do you do with your sessions? Can you share some of your insights? Do you agree with the way I do it? Do you think what I'm talking about is ridiculous? I'd be very interested to know, because there's many ways to skin a cat, as they say, right? And I'd be very, very interested to see what other people do, how other people plan and what they do. So please leave us a comment if you have any thoughts on this, or let us know. So that's kind of planning for us. Let me know what you think. If you're liking the content, please give it a like and a share and a subscribe and all that. If you're listening to the podcast, we're on Spotify and we're on iTunes. We're all over YouTube as well, and now Facebook and Instagram is up and running. And we have a few other ones as well. So look, we're all over. Go give us a follow and a like and a share. Right, appreciate the time. Take care. Bye bye.